During our first rehearsal with her, Miss Mooke randomly started jumping at us and started making odd noises in an effort to engage us not only in a response, but in an actual musical conversation. This was quite new to most of us, if not all of us, and we had no idea what was going on at first. We were all self-conscious, thinking, how will this sound? How will other people like it? Am I even doing this the right way? Well, never fear, Miss Mooke was there, and she had quite a few tips on hand to help us break free of our shells. One of them being to just pretend we were screaming at the teacher we hated the most, but transferring that energy through our instruments and out to the audience. With her help, the KO bands learned to just get up, truly improvise by playing our hearts out, and not to worry about the reactions we'd get. During our time with Miss Mooke, we also discovered that while fundamentals are very necessary, music itself is more than just black notes on a white piece of paper. It's even more than just about the style or dynamic you play with. It's about throwing in a few splashes of color and personality to the music here and there, and some excitement there, and a little bit of mystery here. Most of all, music is about having a meaningful conversation with another musician you're playing with, or even the audience, even if it means getting yourself out of the comfort zone. Later tonight, in the aforementioned piece Chaomatique, we will take a musical journey into metaphorical jungle with solos and improv from Miss Mooke and several of our own KO band students. We are privileged to have worked with this composer to discover that music can be a deep blue or a neon pink, and to break free of the classical musical boundaries into modern-day wonderland.
Once again, we are all very pleased to have worked with Miss Mooke, and we now invite you to welcome her to the stage. Thank you.
Oh, I'm speechless at that introduction. Thank you so much. It made me a little teary-eyed, too. So I'm really delighted to be here, and you all dressed up for the occasion, so I feel really... Oh, you didn't dress up for the occasion? Okay, that's all right. So I'm going to do a little bit of talking and a lot of playing, and we are going to go beyond to spaces that hopefully you haven't discovered yet in this kind of assembly. So I'm going to do a little playing first, and then I'll have some surprises coming up. So enjoy. So, 2 seconds before I started to play, I had no idea what I was going to play. And I just decided to go with those sounds and the energy that I was feeling off you guys, and I went with it. So what do you think? So, thank you. That's my special gift to you guys, because that will never ever happen again in that same way. So, as an improviser, I like to do the first thing I like to do in a new space is offer sort of an homage to the space, and it gives me a sense of the space that I'm in. It gives me a sense of the bodies in the room, the energy, because performing it's a communication. So the two young ladies that were speaking before talked about communication between musicians. It's also communication between the audience and the performer. Often you think you go to a concert and it's just the audience on this side of the stage and the performer on this side of the stage. And sometimes that's just the case, where the orchestra or the band or whatever is just performing at the audience. So I like to have it a two-way street, where I'm sensing where the audience is and we're communicating throughout the whole event, even that we're not speaking with words. So I'm getting your vibes from you, so if I see you kind of nodding off, I get that vibe, and I'll make sure that you don't start to drool. Okay, so I have everything that I'm playing today, by the way, is either improvised, made up on the spot, or something that I have composed previously. And often my work consists of levels of improvisation, because I think it's really important to have that live organic matter going on in a performance. So it's not just, you can go and listen to a recording all the time. So I believe in going out and hearing live music and being part of the scene. So I'll play another piece of mine. One of my earlier pieces that I called Rain Dance. And that was my first entry into what could happen with some of this electronic gadgets. So I'll play Rain Dance, and then I'll explain a little bit more about the instrument and the dancing that I'm doing here. So watch the fancy footwork. Do you have any string players in the house? Anybody play violin? No? Yes? Viola? Can you come down for a minute? I need some help. Two people can come, it's fine. Hurry up though. Telling them they're raindrops. There's no wrong notes. Close your eyes and pizzicato, pluck, whatever you feel like doing. So she asked if there's 5 strings. Have you ever improvised before? No, okay. So, actually, this is an improvisation. I just decided to do that because I felt that was going to be a really cool moment. So, okay, I'll leave that as a backing track. So, yeah, when she took the instrument, she looked at it because it does indeed have 5 strings, which is sort of unusual for a string instrument, right? A violin or viola, cello or bass. Usually they have 4, and usually they're not bright red. So this is a real electric instrument. It doesn't have any acoustic sound. It has a. I'll show you what that is. That's what it sounds like without any effects on it. And this is what it sounds like when it's not plugged in. Who do you think likes that sound the most? Your parents, your neighbors? Yeah. So, but the cool thing is that you can plug it through all of this stuff. So this is an instrument made by Yamaha. Some of you may even play Yamaha instruments or play on a Yamaha piano or ride a Yamaha motorcycle. And it's 5 strings. It kind of looks a little bit like an electric guitar. This is actually a special model that they made for me. They made it because I'm a viola player and I like to play a longer instrument, so they actually extended the length. I went to Japan and I worked with their design team there, and they made this specially for me, so I'm very honored. It's a one of a kind, so you guys, I just played it. It's a little bit of an honor there. So, okay, so What you were listening to is some electronics that come in between this and the speakers, obviously. How many of you work with electronic gear or foot pedals, guitar players, keyboard players? So you know a little bit about what's going on here, right? I'm affecting the sound. These are effects pedals. And anybody know what is making this? You know what that is? It's a looper pedal. Yeah. So this is not just any looper pedal. I can make 3 loops at the same time, and I can get some really cool stereo effects. So I play one note and it comes out at different times in both speakers. So I'll go through some of the different effects that I do. And actually, this is going to bring us into the segment known as a little introduction to Chaomatique. So that's the piece that's going to be, the band piece that's going to be premiered tonight. And it's, I love being a composer. I love being a string player, writing music for concert band. I didn't think that was legal before, but they let me so far. It's my 3rd piece. Okay, so you're going to hear, how many of you are coming tonight? Okay, you're going to hear some really cool things because you're going to hear the band play on their own, and then you'll hear some other surprises. So here's some of the things that you're going to hear in Chaomatique. So I like to create sound worlds. And this is something that was also a little unusual for the band players, is playing notes that don't quite sound in harmony with the person sitting next to them or with the other people. And there builds sort of clusters of sound, but the effect is really cool. So when I do it on the electric viola, it sounds like this. So that's adding some other kind of sounds to it, a lot of reverb, and then there's some pitch shifting and things going on. So the basic sound for that is actually coming out of this little white box right here. That's made by a company called Eventide, and it takes all these different parameters, and it can make it sound like just like this, like a big room with other instruments playing other notes after me. There's a moment when I play one note. Bouncing around. So I'm just going to digress for one moment. How many people here write music? How many composers? A few? Okay. Songwriters with a guitar, with a keyboard, walk down the street, just start whistling a tune you don't know, sing in the shower. So as a composer, I use all of these as my tools. So it's not just sitting when I compose, I don't just sit at a keyboard or write on my desk. That I don't have that kind of a skill. There's some amazing composers that just hear everything in their head and they write it down. What I do is I utilize all these tools, my instrument and the electronics, and I just start experimenting and mixing the sound, kind of like a cook in a kitchen. If you add a little more salt and a little less sugar and some lemon and some other spices, even with the same ingredients, if you change up how much you're putting in, the cake or the cookies or whatever, it's going to taste totally different. So when I'm creating a piece, I come up with a concept, an idea, and then I explore with the electronics different sounds. So it could be that I'm scrolling through my electronics and I hit one note and I think that sounds pretty cool. Let's see what I can do with that. Maybe. Different places. All right, at this point I'd like to invite one of your colleagues up. So there's as the ladies mentioned before, there's a lot of different journeys this piece takes us to. And one of them I thought would be a cool place for people to explore improvisation if they've never improvised before is a jungle. Because, if you're in a jungle, there's all kinds of sounds happening, right? So let's try to explore the different sounds, interact with the sounds already in the jungle, make some other kind of sounds. It's a safe place. There's some really cool things going on. And I put in a kind of a jungle beat. And at this point, I'd love Neil to jump up on the stage and... He plays a lot of really cool stuff in this piece tonight, so I hope you can hear him. So, you want to give a little bit of... So here's Neil doing the jungle sounds. Beat of the jungle. Yeah, yeah. that's kind of the idea. Of course, it will sound very different when there's the band members are doing their thing and doing their own. They're having conversations. They're doing all kinds of sounds in there, just letting their imaginations go wild. So one of the things I like to do is, like, in my sessions, and what I try to impart is that there's something inside here that we're not always allowed to do in school or in places like this. And it doesn't mean it's illegal, it just means there's a time and place for everything. But know that you have access to that. These sounds exist in you somewhere, and there's a place for you to, either in composition or in art, but it's important to know it's there and let that out. It's a good outlet. So I was talking about improvisation, and there's a lot of that going on. There's some cool things that go on with the trumpets and the trombones stand up at one point, and they do a cool thing where they start playing on one side and they point their bells all the way around the room so you can hear it, like, instead of, it's a sort of equal kind of sound going from one side to the other. So you'll be hearing them do that. Then they do crazy things like turn around and face the wall and play while things are going on. And then there's some really cool moments where some of the performers are actually performing and interacting with me. So we do another level of improvisation that happens. So, Lon? Yeah. And
Hi, I'm Alon. I play the tenor sax. Yeah.
I'm Amelia. I play the valve trombone.
stuff that happened. So there was obviously a communication going on between the three of us. We were really in tune with each other, and even if you maybe didn't quite understand what we were saying to each other, we were having a very meaningful conversation. So I hope that came across. So, all right, I'm going to play a piece that I did last year that's called Dreaming in Sound. It was a very big tech piece. And I had, it was about an hour long, electric viola. I had not only my stereo pedals, but I had 4 speakers up here that I was throwing loops into, 4 separate loops. And I had foot pedals so that I could tell the loops to spin this way, or spin this way, or spin that way, in contrast to each other. Right? It's like the scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz. So, and I had interactive visuals, which was really cool because, and this was all run through a program called Max MSP. And the visuals that were listening to what I was doing, and they would respond, and then I would actually respond to them. So it became a very interactive all around. So I'm going to do a little bit of that, and you'll hear a few more sounds. So. Just so you know, I'm dialing up the different effects that I've preset, so I know the sound that I'm calling on. And it's programmed through my iPad. One other piece, and then I'll open it up if there's some questions. So I do a lot of collaborations with people. I have a duo with electric guitar. Our duo is called Boeing, because sometimes he plays with something that makes the strings vibrate with an ebow, it's called. And sometimes I sound more like an electric guitar. So we wrote this piece together that's called Cafe Mars. And it's another piece that takes you on a journey, and I take on the role of different instruments and different Martians that come to this strange bar at all hours of the night, and it's sort of green haze because they're still allowed to smoke on Mars. They drink all kinds of strange. Version of Cafe Mars, but we all land safely. So with a few minutes left, I will take questions. Anybody have any questions about what I do, why I do it, what the gear is, any insight? I have a feeling. So, because what happens is, yeah. Okay. So up until high school, I was a mild-mannered viola player. I played a traditional viola, which I have back here because I came from a rehearsal yesterday. By the way, Sunday night, I'm playing with the American Composers Orchestra down in Symphony Space. We're playing an amazing piece by Steve Reich called Desert Music. So up until like high school, that's all I pretty much knew. I practiced my scales and my etudes and all that, and then somebody introduced me to the work of Jean-Luc Ponty, a jazz violinist that also played electric violin, and he had a 5-string violin on the cover of his CD. And I listened to it, and it was like my mind exploded. I thought, how can I do that? I had never heard these sounds before, I'd never heard that kind of playing before. He was an improviser, played jazz, worked with electronics. It just blew my mind. So I started exploring. I found there were really no electric violists at that time. I found all the electric violinists, jazz players, started listening to Turtle Island String Quartet, Kronos Quartet. I discovered Laurie Anderson, and just went into a whole new sound world, which maybe I would have found later on. But so, I'm a big proponent of you don't know what you're missing until you know what you've been missing. So there's so much out there that you just didn't know existed, so keep looking for it, finding it. Yeah. So this is part of why I like collaborating. So Randy, the guitar player, we would just start jamming together, and he came up with that bass riff, which is in an odd meter. And we just came up with this whole concept of, it sounds like it's this crazy jazz that happens on Mars. If you listen to the recording, which is on our CD called Cafe Mars, you'll hear a lot more. Randy does some really cool effects with his electric guitar, but I've sort of translated it into a solo piece that I can do with my loops here. That's how I come up with a lot of my pieces, by the way, is I come up with a concept or an idea, and then I start exploring where that can take me to. Any other questions? Good questions? No? Okay, don't move. I like cell phones. When I count to 3, everybody likes to jump up and wave. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Go, go. I think you guys got the chance to go crazy. Okay, so let's do the wheel. All right, we're going to start here. You guys have a wave. All right, ready?